Okay, thank you.
Okay, can we pray as we start? Father, we thank you for this time together. Thank you that you are good. Your mercy endures forever. And as these, your children, are gathered, we ask that you would open your mind, you would open our minds, you would grant us wisdom beyond our years, wisdom beyond what is even being said here. We thank you, Lord, that you would be the one who communicates through the person who will be speaking, and we give you all the glory for what's going to happen in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. So welcome
Amen.
to this second edition. So what we are trying to do is, on the one hand, look at what are the building blocks for doing work as opposed to getting a job. And on the other hand, we are looking at the context in which this is happening. And the social compact that we more or less have is that we want to make a difference, but maybe in a new way. And making a difference, of course, has to do with earning a living for ourselves and the people that are important to us and other people that we empower. And in a new way is to look at a new way to look at the economy. And a new way of the economy requires of us to look at the world from a different perspective. So in the line of the creating a business, we're using the Wired for Business material, and let me share that. So I want to share two presentations with you at the same time. Okay, and I cannot handle another call as well. Let me see, start share screen. Let me see if I can. Yes, I can. Okay. So there is, okay, you can see the Wired for Business screen. And we're working through this. This is a program that has been developed over the last 15 years to help people to help themselves. So there are 150 of these centers around the world in 20 different countries. The foundation course is called Work for a Living, and it's about making it easy for people to understand how to get a job and keep a job. So, and in parallel to that, for those that have the initiative and the capability, is the Wired for Business course, which is about helping yourself to help even more people than otherwise. Okay, so we started. Yes, any questions, comments at this time? Okay. So we will be doing this, but let's first go back to the context side of things. So what we want at the end of the Wired for Business is a new entrepreneur, connected, excellent in production, sales, service, and administration. But that fits into a context. So let's first go and look at a little bit about the context. And last time, 2 weeks ago, so apologies for not being available last week. I was not in a place where there's internet, so there's certainly a business opportunity there for internet. But let's look at the systems theory world of context in which we can operate. So let me share this screen. I wonder whether I should. It's easier to just share the one screen and not the one window. Then I maybe, let's see. Let's see. Okay. Let's just make this smaller. Okay, so last week we had a look at, we were introduced to two of the three laws of cybernetics. The one law is everything is interconnected. So there's nothing that is isolated in this world. And the second law is everything is hierarchical. So if you find something at a certain level and you think you understand it, if you take any one of your building blocks and you unpack it, you will find exactly the same structure. Things happening, and there's a whole world of models with which to think about that. But the third law is really also very important. That is that everything needs sufficient diversity. So that means that if you want to control anything, let's say you're taking 7 dogs for a walk, and you only have 6 leashes for dogs, then you're going to lose 1 dog. Okay? So if you want to control something, if you want to have benefit of something, you need to have sufficient diversity in your management structure of your system to be able to control everything. And we'll put, next week, I will introduce the viable systems model to you, which makes this even more understandable from how does these things interrelate. Seeing that you all, or most of you, had an introduction into engineering a long time ago, it should not be a foreign concept to see things interconnected. So these 3 laws, which were, I think they were founded in 1954, more or less, is a very good guideline. If you see something that you don't understand or something is happening and you're not figuring out how it works, then ask these 3 questions. Okay. Okay, so one aspect of what we are busy with here is all about capital. Now, this picture here is actually says a lot of things about capital. Now, if you look at the business press, then you'll see there's an enormous amount of discussion and reporting about financial capital. And there's maybe a little bit of now and again, you will see they talk about a factory. There's the Mara smartphone factory, for example. Okay? But you see less and less things about intellectual capital, social and relationship capital, and human capital. And these 3 capitals, in fact, determines what you can do with financial and manufacturing capital. And then, of course, our environment, our climate allows us to do something or not. So that's why climate change actually makes a big impact on our ability to do any of this. For example, the last 2 years with COVID, we have been severely restricted in doing many things. Intellectual capital, maybe online, you can do almost everything. But for sure, social and relationship capital has been severely restricted as a result of not meeting people. Certainly people got lonely, and there's a whole host of evidence about people, more suicides and people who went into a mental state which is not their normal state. And of course, this all had an impact on if you read about the whole supply chain problem. It's actually quite an interesting problem, because it started with the Americans giving people grants who otherwise would not have had the money, so they would not buy anything else otherwise, but they used this money to suddenly order things which they wouldn't normally buy, and suddenly you have a big supply chain problem, which is even further constrained by the fact that sometimes the harbors can work and sometimes they cannot because of COVID. So this is still a bottleneck in the current world. I mean, in the case of South Africa, what we see is that our harbor capacity is fully utilized because of export requirements for agriculture, because we had some bumper agriculture years, and we need to build more harbors. They're investing in Maputo to get some of the things out. Okay. Let me see. I'm going to. So there's lots of initiatives. I'm going to just, I think I'm going to escape from this. Stop screen share. Doesn't seem to be as responsive as I would like it. Okay, so when we start a business, we need to have all these capitals in place to be able to make progress. And of course, you need a cooperating computer. Okay. So what we looked at last time was how the ladder of inference worked. And I'm going to go back to that for a moment. And I recall that we looked at I'll just do a screen at a time. Share, yeah. So what we looked at is how do we make decisions, that it's automatic processing, that this going up and down the ladder, choosing the data, adding cultural meaning, making assumptions, using my belief system. What I believe is what I can see, and then acting on it. And all of this happens in a split second. Okay. We looked at how it manifests, labels for that split second reaction. We looked at perceptions, stereotypes, and rhetoric. And we looked at the three, I call the three ugly sisters in South Africa: inequality, poverty, and unemployment. Now, these are very high-level concepts. And if you remember the principle of the cybernetics, it means that if you see it at a high level, it's in a hierarchy. So if you unpack it one level lower, you will find it again. All these things are interrelated, interconnected. And the fact that we cannot get it under control, as is defined by the court of popular belief, means that we don't have the sufficient diversity to control it yet. So tonight, in terms of our context, we're going to spend the most time trying to get to one level lower in terms of understanding very specifically one of these concepts, and we'll get to that in a moment. And the whole principle behind it is, if we can understand all the different building blocks from a certain perspective around poverty, then we can identify each one of those as a need. Then we can create a business to satisfy them. Okay. So that's the rationale. Use cybernetics to say, let's zoom in on poverty, unpack it to one level lower, so that we can understand it better, and then we can understand the needs, and those needs can be satisfied by a business. Okay. So so the way that traditionally people have understood needs are in the context of Maslow's hierarchy. Okay. So all of this the bottom four has to do with basic stuff, and then once you have satisfied your basic requirements, you can actually go for self-actualization, where you are looking at realizing your full potential. Okay? So there's quite a bit of things to do. I'm just going to mute somebody here. Okay, then, so if we look at, so that's Maslow's version of it. Okay, and you may have learned that at school or at university. But let's look at another perspective. Okay? So remember, a perspective is just another ladder against another wall that somebody else built. And the problem with building a ladder or having a ladder is that each one can only build his own or her own ladder. So you cannot process fast enough in the case of a reaction by using somebody else's ladder. You have to build your own ladder. And it happens automatically, but you've may build, your ladder may be set against the wrong wall. So this is a framework within which to think about a ladder. And so this was done by economist in Chile. He's called Manfred Max Neef. There's the book, Manfred Max Neef, Human Scale Economics. And he asked the question, by the way, I sent a book that I referred to last week by Hubecker, How Work Systems Work, to Dumisani. He's welcome to distribute it to everybody. Okay. So Manfred Max Neef, so his book, you cannot, unfortunately, I cannot distribute it for free. You have to buy it from Amazon. But he asked this question, why does the people on top of the Andes mountain, why are they happy? That's in Chile. And why are the people in Santiago who have everything, that's the capital, why are they also happy? How is this possible? One group of people have nothing and the other group of people have everything, but they're still happy. And then he came up with this very basic model. He said, everybody has got needs, and we'll look at them in a moment. And the way that the people on the mountain satisfy those needs is quite different from the people, how the people down in the capital of Chile satisfy the needs. And that satisfiers actually is your culture. Okay? So and that's how you can say the people on top of the mountain have a different culture to the people in the capital of Santiago. That culture is a catch-all word. Again, one of these very complex words like poverty and inequality, that is a catch-all word, but really it describes the satisfiers. Now, you can satisfy something by having stuff. You can avoid being satisfied by potentially abusing something. You can be satisfied by doing something. And then, of course, you can be satisfied by the environment or not. Okay. So if we unpack these needs, then the sun more or less comes up in terms of understanding what's going on. So existence, this is essentially the first four, very much the first four levels of Maslow. Maybe the first three. Safety is protection. So having bread on your table, a roof over your head, shelter and food, and is just one of 9 different primary needs. Remember, this is the needs of the people on the mountain and the people at the bottom of the mountain in Santiago. So the next need is protection, feeling safe. The next need is to care for and to be cared for. But look at this, to understand, to be curious about something, to be able to participate in something. Remember all the sanctions. The government took a position that the Miss South Africa shouldn't participate in the Miss World competition in Israel. Participation is a basic need. Idle time, enjoying yourself, doodling is a basic need. Being creative is a basic need. Of course, then identity, one would expect to be there, to be recognized and valued as yourself, and then freedom is certainly one of those. So you can see here are now 9 primary needs. So there are 9 ways, 9 different ways in which you can be poor. Okay? And remember, we just use poverty as a throwaway word, which mostly has to do with existence. Do I have food on my table and the shelter over my head? So there's many more ways in which you can be poor. So if we unpack those needs a little bit, next week we're going to look at the haves. This week we look at denial. Deny somebody their need. So here are needs. Existence. So if you keep somebody from getting access to work, food, or shelter, you are not satisfying, that person is not satisfying their need. Okay. protection, increased risk for personal safety. So this is a big issue in my view, a big issue in South Africa. There are many places, many people in many places who say they are not safe. Care, if you deny somebody, somebody tells you something in confidence and you tell it to somebody else, you're denying somebody their needs. If you are keeping information from somebody, if you are not enabling somebody to go to school, if they can't go to university, if you censor information, you are denying a need. If you are removing the rights to participation, sanctions, for example, look what they're doing to Russia at the moment. They are cutting off all kinds of participation rights on Russia. Idle time. If you are if you are anxious all the time, if you are living under a cloud of anxiety, you are poor because you can't relax. Your adrenaline system will sooner or later will kill you because you're under stress all the time. Creativity, if people don't allow you to be creative, wherever you are, in the work or around the house or in the community, that's a basic need. Identity, if your identity is threatened, if somebody tells you, but you can't be an ABC for whatever reason, whatever identity you want to assume, and people say, no, but you can't be that, we don't recognize that, then you are making that person poorer. And then, of course, the whole world of freedom, being able to do what you want when you want to do it. So here are 9 different ways in which people have primary needs, and the economy is all about somebody else addressing my primary need. 9 different needs that everybody has, according to the research from an economist's perspective. So these 9 needs are immediately the basis of different services and products that one can provide in your community or in your society that will help people to address their needs. And because their needs are addressed in a particular way, they will be happy. Okay. Any questions at this point in time? So this is one perspective. We're going to introduce another perspective tonight as well. Okay, good. I think we're going to come back to the other perspective after we've done a few sets of tools under the Wired for Business. Okay, so let's share the screen again, and this time we go to Wired for Business. Okay, so last time, 2 weeks ago, I remember we have done what stops us from growing a business, our mindset. I want to see if I can get this larger. So we looked at empowered mindset. We looked at the ingredients. We looked at the financial concepts. Essentially says if you don't have the money, you can't buy it. I can't remember. Did we do market analysis as well? Anyway, let's go back to market analysis. So what we've just discussed now, the 9 basic needs of people. And now you can see that the 9 needs of people can be in a setting like a rural setting, where they can be addressed in a certain way, but the 9 basic needs can also be in an urban setting. So it's not one size fits all. Each setting, each cultural context, if you like, allows you to address a need in a different way. Okay? So when we look at market analysis, you can now look at it from how do we solve the poverty problem? And you don't have to use the word poverty because you now have 9 new languages, 9 new vocabulary words with which you can test. So what is your need? Okay. So this is a question. If you, so let's take, we looked at, just 1 second.
Because you armed yourself before entering the hut. There was no way you would have.
So let me just, somehow I have lost my screen for a moment. Let me just get it back. Awesome. Okay. Okay, I've got control of my screen again. Okay, so we've done that. We've done question about money. Okay, so market analysis. So if you are already doing something, this example here is a creche. Of course, you can just as well, we talked last week about, last time, 2 weeks ago, about the fleet SAR constellation, but there could be many different things that we do. And now, one of there are many questions that you can ask about the market analysis. Okay. So the point 1.2 there, and we definitely discussed this, was if you could ask anything of God, what would you ask? And Solomon asked for wisdom. So wisdom is not about material wealth. It's not about the things under the earth, the soil, the surface of the earth, but it's about your imagination and how you can apply that. Okay, so there's even a piece of scripture, James 1 verse 5, which says, if any of you lack wisdom, you should pray to God, who will give it to you. That's a dangerous promise, because God gives generously and graciously to all. Okay, so there's nothing holding you back. Something is holding you back, you can pray more. Okay, I think we did do did I send you the homework questions? Can't remember. Yeah.
Yes,
so,
you did. Yes, you did, sir.
I did. Okay. Did I expect you to answer them as well?
You did.
I did. Okay. Is there somebody that wants to venture answer to question number 1? If you love doing something, is that a good thing to start your business with? A, B, or C?
C.
C, yeah. Okay, so there must be a need. Okay. Are home deliveries from my shop a point of differentiation? A, B, or C? So this was in the, what did we sell in our shop? We didn't say. Okay, so it could be. Is our home deliveries from my shop during COVID-19 a point of differentiation? Yes, for sure it can be. Okay. Question 4. If we ask God for wisdom, he says he will.
Never say no. B.
Yeah, he might just take his time, but he will never say no. Okay, here's one, number 5. if there is crime in my community. Now, crime, remember how it relates to the 9 basic needs. So crime can take any one of those needs away from you. Okay? Is that a problem I can use to start a business? Yes or no?
No.
Yes.
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 Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
so, yes. Yeah, lots of yeses and and a few no's. In fact, we can do a poll on these questions.
It's a yes.
Yeah, yeah. But one needs to if your answer is no, it means that you need to go and sit down and reflect and unpack what you see and find the next level of abstraction, building blocks. Why on earth is this happening? What are the interconnections which makes it possible? What are the interconnections that makes it encourages it? And somewhere in there you will find a solution. Okay, so now question number 6: if there's lots of hair salons in my community, does it mean that it's a good idea or not?
No.
No.
No. Okay. So next question: if there are many hair salons in my community, then opening a hair salon, if there are,
It's not good.
in a community that has no hair salons, would that be a good business to start? So it's another community that have no hair salons.
Yes. True.
Yes.
I think so, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that could be true. That could be true. Okay, business basics 2.1. Would I make debt to start a business? No, don't make debt unless you know what you're doing. Now that you know what you're doing, of course, is again one of these high level concepts, because what on earth does that mean? One needs to go and unpack that, and this is what this next section is all about, is to unpack that into the next level of hierarchy. So, and it goes further, it says you must know 100% know what you're doing. So how on earth does one know what you're doing? So this is all about the banks. Of course, they tell you that you need to make, they want you to make debt, because that's how banks do business. Banks makes money when they give you 100 Rand and they take back 110 Rand. That's how a bank makes money. So a bank will always tell you they're happy to provide you with debt as long as you have a salary slip and you can show how you can pay it back. But you don't necessarily have to start to use money to take debt on to start a business from scratch. So here's a number of examples. Microsoft started in a garage. Now, if you read Bill Gates' story, he was his parents actually enabled him to work on some of the very first computers that were available to people to use in general at the beginning of the computer age. So he had experience, he had exposure to that kind of thing. So, and of course, he can also connect dots, and that's when he had the opportunity to start a business around computer software. He actually took it. So if you want to take a loan, here's a number of questions. Do you have the exact costing of my business? You know what something, if you want to sell, if you want to sell satellite data, let's go back to satellites for a moment. Do you know how much 1 square kilometer of satellite data costs? And what is the minimum quantity that's associated with that? Okay? So next, let's say that's typically in the order of $3,000. What's that in rands? That is, that's 45,000 Rand for one satellite image, let's say of reasonably high resolution capacity. That's quite a lot. And that image, typically, the smallest size that you can order is 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers. Okay, and that's quite a large area on the ground. So now, do I have clients secured? So who on earth is going to pay me my 45,000 Rand plus a reasonable profit on that? Okay, so what would be a reasonable profit, would you think? 20%? 30%? 40%? Anybody?
20% is reasonable.
Reasonable. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we have to add 9,000 Rand. So we're now sitting with a product that we want to sell in the market for 54,000 Rand. Okay. So who are my clients? Okay. So let's say I want to sell this satellite data to households for some reason. I have cracked the nut and I know how to supply households with information that they otherwise would not have. Okay. So, and each household has a plot of, let's say, I don't know, what's the size of should we take an affluent suburb or should we take a rural setting? In the rural setting, people have quite a big, let's say they have 1 hectare, 100 by 100 meters. Yeah, so that's 10,000 square meters. So that is, my sum's correct. So that's 10 kilometers square. So, no, that's not correct. 10 by 10 is 100 square kilometers. Okay. So if I take 1 hectare plots in a rural setting and I want to sell them reasonable information for their plots so they can do agriculture, for example, precision agriculture, then I need 10 of these clients. So each of them has to pay 5,400 Rand for one perspective on their little piece of land that they have. Okay, so I need to sell it 10 to 10 different people. Okay, so you need to get your 10 clients signed up. So how long is it going to take you to get those clients signed up? So that's cash flow because you need to put bread on your table, 2 months, 3 months. And now that 54,000, of course, doesn't include your salary. Okay? So let's say for the moment, your salary is I'm just using a round number, is 10,000 Rand a month. Of course, that's not the CEO salary. That's maybe the administrator salary. So you need to add 20% of the CEO salary. Maybe that's another 10,000 Rand. So actually your selling cost for this product that you have here, well, you have 54,000 Rand to make on the profit. But if you are going to wait 3 months before you sell your first, or get the full order paid for, then you have used 20,000 Rand in month 1, 20,000 Rand in month 2, 20,000 Rand in month 3, and then you have to pay the supplier is 45,000 Rand.
We lost you. No audio. Sias?
I thought it was me.
I think he's frozen. It will probably bomb him out and he'll come back.
He complained about the network connectivity where he is and said it's a good business deal. We better think about going there. I'm joking.
Apologies, my network just disappeared.
We better think about, Sias, we better think about that business deal, eh, for the network.
Yeah, it seems to be a need, huh? I just need somebody to share this, to allow me to share the screen, please. I can't share my screen.
I'm on it. Just wait. Check again. Check again and tell me if you can again.
Yep, I can now. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay. Okay, so we were just answering these 4 questions. I'm not sure where I lost you. Did you do you know how much money we spent in 3 months' time before selling all our data? Did we get there? Okay, let me do a quick. So I said, if we have to wait, if we have to work for 3 months to sell all our data, so this is now 6 months. This is even worse. But let's take just 3 months. We had 10,000 Rand for the admin person. We had 20% of the CEO's time allocated to the project. So we have 20,000 Rand a month fixed cost. For 3 months, that's 60,000 plus the cost of the data, 45. So we have cost of 105,000 and we have income of 54,000. So it doesn't work. Okay, so you have to make these sums. Okay, so if you don't know what you're doing, then don't do it. Okay, so later we will cover the matter of when do you need capital and actually how to raise it. And there's a whole world and a whole language attached to that. Very good principle, start small with what you have and understand what people need. Learn, keep a journal, have a model of what you thought you were going to do, and make sure that you update your model all the time. Okay, in future, financial institutions have all kinds of financial instruments to help you to do a business. But yeah, first have a business, first have a product and a need and a customer, and then take it from there. I'm not sure I can see that you are connected. Let me just, yeah, okay, now you're all here. Okay, so there's a piece in Proverbs which says that the borrower is a slave to the money lender. And if you think about it, if you've got a bond on your home, then you know that you're working for the bank. Well, you first work for SARS and then you work for the bank and then you can work for your family. And if you borrow money and you have 1 bad month, in fact, we now had 2 bad years, then you still have to pay back the money. So ways to start a business without raising capital. So the first question you can ask yourself is, what do you have? Do you have a skill? Do you have, can you bake a cake? So start with what you have. I mean, yeah, there's the gentleman who introduced me to this Wired for Business, Lutando Maliu. He started a car wash business in Port Elizabeth. He went to one of the big hotels who have got VIP clients, and he said, well, can I not wash the VIP clients' cars for you as part of the service that you provide to your VIP clients? So of course, the hotel have an interest in keeping their VIP clients happy. So they say, yeah, sure. We will commission you to do your team of people to do car washing once over the weekends for our VIP clients. Okay, and that was quite a thriving little business, of course, that stops when you have COVID. Okay. Here's another example, Shutterstock, the guy that started the company. He's a photographer. He took photos and he just put his own photos on the internet that you could order and pay for it. So it was already, photos take a long time to take if you think about it. So you can start with what you have, whatever you have. Remember those 9 basic needs of people. Go and test each one of them and see if you can address that. This thing about getting the job secured before you start, this job is an order. So before you secure your staff, first get the contract. Okay? Get people to pay upfront. Of course, if you run away with the upfront fee, then people will never trust you. Okay. And then here's the whole point about cash flow. At the beginning of the second week, to send the invoice for the following 2 weeks, so that you're also always 1 week ahead in terms of your available cash. Okay, some business basics. So wisdom includes being strategic. This is again one of those very high level statements. Wisdom is one of the most important aspects of the person needs in order to succeed. So God has given your country and your continent incredible resources, but the lack of wisdom can contribute greatly to poverty in many communities. Okay. So there's a whole community asking the question, why in Africa, if we have all this natural resources and we have all the people, why don't we have the prosperity that we see in Europe and in North America? So wisdom has a little bit to do with that. In fact, a lot to do with that. And don't delay, ask God immediately for wisdom. So in Chronicles, you can read about him setting up trade relationships and giving other people things that he's got to get what he needs. So back to asking God for wisdom. Don't ask him for more resources, asking for wisdom. How do you apply it? So our resources, no matter how abundant, will help us if we lack wisdom of God. So of course, ask him to bless your plans and be successful in carrying them out. Okay, homework. Discuss with your family, friends, whether you really need to borrow money for a business. In fact, you can explain to them rather why you don't need money for the business. You're going to start anyway. Just for good measure, remember Proverbs 22, verse 7. And then point 2, that's it. Explain how you're going to start a business without borrowing any money. Okay, here's an example of an inspiration. So Ntando Tabete, she has a large backyard. She got some money from her husband. She planted some vegetables to feed her family, but today she has a business employing 40 people. And she's proving that the agricultural sector is not only for men. So she lost her job in mechanical engineering sales because the company relocated, so things happen. She was left unemployed, and her husband became the only breadwinner for the house. So what did she have? She had time and she had a large backyard. So what did she do? She planted seeds for broccoli, peppers, cauliflower, and spinach. And then she had more than she could use. And she then started selling some of it to members in her community. So she attracted attention from a pick and pay store near her house. So she didn't have enough peppers to supply. Then she went, now you go to the local authority to get a to get a go-ahead for a tunnel in her backyard, and then you can plant even more. She chose a nice name, Elite Crop, and she's supplying 8 tons of frozen vegetables monthly. Can you believe it? And now you can even export dried products as well, including herbs and tomato powder. Okay, so there's lots of examples. Quiz for next week. Okay, so that's a question about the loan. Okay, I will send this to Dumisani to distribute to you so you have something physical that you can work with. Okay, so let's go back to context. So next week we will start with 3.1. We might need more than 4 sessions, but nevertheless. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to context. So remember what we did now under context is we understood, we unpacked the very complex word or the very complex principle called poverty. And next week we'll do it in another way. Today we just looked at it from a denial. If you take something away from somebody, what happens? But there's another extremely important perspective with which you can look at the world. And this is at a macro scale. The poverty we unpacked into a micro scale. This is now taking one step back. So if you look at all the things happening in our society, there's a whole range of processes that runs in parallel. And these processes, the one gives the scope to operate in for the next one and for the next one. Now, in this particular diagram, in fact, there's yet another. I'm just going to do some real time. So there's another process, which is even bigger than this process that we're talking about. And that's a 20 to 50 year process. And that's the spiritual process. Okay? So for now, I'm just going to move this right back to the back. Send to back. And we're going to take one of these normatives and we put it up there. And this is the spiritual process. Okay, so at the highest level, and this course that we're doing, Wired for Business, actually is built around that in the first instance. At the highest level, we have a process that runs from our birth until we pass away one day, and that's the spiritual process. Okay? And the spiritual process encompasses, right, exactly as we are discussing it now, 20 years, well, 5 years to 20 to 50 years. So that's the long-term process that runs in parallel to what we are doing otherwise. And that process encompasses normative processes. So this is the 5 to 20 year process. So this is the processes by which we make decisions. This determines the norms within which we make a decision. So for example, if we decide to write a constitution, we can say we are going to write a constitution, but we can't say it will have 7 sections and it will exactly address the following concepts. We can only say we are going to write a constitution, and that's a decision, and that's a platform, normative platform on which everybody can bring their concerns and their dreams and ideals to the table. So things like the South African Constitution was written over a period of 6 years. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission is a normative process. One can say that a big part of the Zondo Commission is a normative process, but it's also got it seems to be having some sting. Strategic processes are things like 3 to 5 years. I can build a hospital with 100 beds. I can build a water supply system for 10,000 households. So this, you can specify exactly what the output is going to be. And what we're talking about in our work wired for business are all about value add processes. I have to deliver vegetables tomorrow to Pick n Pay, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. I can build a tunnel to deliver the 8 tons of vegetables in the next 2 to 3 months, and then I can supply that, use that to supply for the next 2 years. So all these processes run in parallel. And so Wired for Business just looks at this value-added processes. What we looked at now, unpacking how to understand poverty and to get a handle on what are the building blocks for poverty, is a normative process. Okay. And every now and again, we are reminded about, guys, you're not alone. There's actually a spiritual domain as well. Okay, I see our time is up at 9 o'clock. Next week, we will unpack this in more detail. Each of these processes have some elements to them, and you can manage it. You can, and if you are in a community, you must make sure, and the community, remember, it's hierarchical. So whether it's in your street, whether it's in your municipality, whether it's in your neighborhood, you have all these processes running all the time. And at the same time, looking after all 4 of these processes allow you to have sufficient diversity to make sure that you don't have surprises, that everybody's aspirations and their needs are addressed all the time. So sufficient diversity assumes that you are doing all 4 of these processes in parallel. Now, of course, this you have to do daily. Strategic is not a daily issue. The planning cycle for this maybe every year, an annual story. Normative process is definitely not a daily story. It's maybe a meeting once a month, or over, if you want to solve a specific problem, once a week for a period of 6 months or so, or maybe 2 to 3 years. And the spiritual process is something that comes with you for life. So all 4 of these need to be run in parallel to achieve sufficient diversity. Okay. Any questions? Or comments?
Okay, Prof, I've got my hand up there.
You got your hand up. Okay, I can't see.
Yes,
I can't
no,
see hands.
no worries.
Let me. Okay. Now everybody's back. Let me sign in. Yes.
This one. I'm mostly surprised by the slide that we've just been on, the one about the processes. You know, just to know that we live a life where the things that we do daily, you know, end up feeding into our strategic view of life, what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. And if we keep to that, then it leads to what becomes the norm in our lives over a period of 5 to 20 years. That's when we build our norms. And then, you know, 20 to 50 years, we're talking now about the spiritual solidity of each of us. It's quite mind-blowing to see it that way. I'm just to comment and say I'm amazed, which then means that we have a responsibility to not sit back, but to make sure that today we understand that we are what we are doing today is actually building up to the next 20 to 50 years of our lives and even of the lives of other people. So when it comes to building our future, we can't sit and be quiet today. We have to do something in order to make sure that we influence what's going to result in the next 3 to 5 years, what's going to result in the next 5 to 20, as well as ultimately the 20 to 50 years. Thank you.
Yeah, but at the same time, what you experience today, the measure by which you are in a position to do value add processes has been determined by what people did in terms of investing in water processing, for example, in the last 3 to 5 years, building schools, building clinics, building hospitals. And whether they did that or not is influenced by what is the normative system within which decisions are made. So if decisions are not made to, for example, if decisions are not made to do maintenance because maintenance is not important, then it means that all the infrastructure that were established in the period before 3 to 5 years, in the last, let's say, 20, 30 years, and this can be tangible infrastructure or intangible infrastructure, all of that is busy losing value slowly but surely, until one day it's suddenly not there anymore. So as much as it is important to invest today, we are subjected to decisions made and how people make decisions in the last 3 to 5 to 20 years. It works both ways.
The situation you just explained is what's happening at ESCOM currently.
Well, that's you see now we're sitting with another interesting thing, and that is what is true. Because what is being presented to us is a view that people believe other people should have of them. But it's just a view, it's just another perspective. So, and invariably, that view makes a number of generalizations. And remember, a generalization is just another word for stereotype, rhetoric, any of those other language for simply trying to simplify something at too high a level of abstraction. Yeah. Misani, I agree with you. So it is really critical. So what is the so if it is a problem, then it means that the level that we are thinking about it is too high. We don't have sufficient diversity in our conversation to be able to take a handle on what we see slowly degrading. So we must unpack the problem one level deeper in abstraction until we can see, but this is the missing link. This is the one thing of the 20 things that are important that we're not doing. So there's a process for that. There's a process for unpacking something into smaller and smaller and smaller details until you find you're in a position to talk to the problem and take a hold of it and apply sufficient diversity to solve the problem. Okay, Dumisani, you have your thumb up. Okay, it's not a hand up.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very informative and it is really sharpening our minds, and it will reach a pinnacle or a point when all the layers have been taken off one by one and we reach the bottom layer. Thanks a lot.
Okay, my absolute delight to share what I know with you. Okay, then that's all for tonight. Then next week at 8 o'clock, Thursday, the 10th of March, we can take the next step. If you want to, I think Dumisani, you may want to, Lerato, you may want to do a poll to see whether whether an hour is the right time slot or an hour and a half. I'm happy to do an hour and a half. That's no problem from my side if it helps us to get through the material faster.
It's entirely up to you, Prof. And perhaps if you could give us an idea of, if you do an hour and a half from now, how many more sessions will we have? That
To be funny. Look, I suggested that we do 4 sessions for the sake of starting somewhere and finishing somewhere. I can see. Let's get to 4, and then I'll do a summary of what is not covered, and then we'll make a decision at that time. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. I would have loved to have more interaction, but let's see. Let's see what the world brings. Okay, and next time I can do an hour and a quarter. I think an hour and a quarter is fine, and then we have 15 minutes for question and answer. So we can have it in total 1.5 hours of time. Okay. You can get a little bit more done.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening.
Thank you.
Can I ask the rest of us, can we please talk about these things in the WhatsApp group that we are in? The way you guys are quiet, yet you are learning, is just, it's scary. Let's talk in the group. Thank you.
I'm sure that's